right. Why don't we open the hearing? We're still waiting for a couple of members to join, so we might be able to take care of some of the business matters. Or we can see if the first applicant wants to go with 4 members, but in any event, today is Tuesday, October 26th. This is the Town of Easton Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. Let's see here.
James Burke, how are you?
Very well, Stephen. Thank you. You look wonderful.
Try my best. Have a haircut like you.
Yeah.
Attorney Burke, do you want us to go forward?
I have no problem going forward with a 4-member panel, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Then why don't we get started with that hearing? This is 6:30 public hearing, special permit number 21, applicant seeking permission for use of a permanent trailer for business use for property located at 98 Columbus Avenue. Mr. McCall, would you like to read any comments that are in the file?
Sure, I'll read in the notice first. Easton Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, October 26, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. to be held remotely on the petition special permit Lucchini Bus Lines for property located at 98 Columbus Avenue, Easton, Assessors Map 21U, Lot 4, for special permit to Easton Code Book, Chapter 235, Zoning, Appendix A, Table of Use Regulations I, subsection 10, as follows. Applicant seeks permit for use of a permanent trailer for business use. This notice is also available at masspublicnotices.org. The following comments all were not applicable. That would be Affordable Housing Trust, Historical Commission, DPW. The Police Department status was recommend with no comment. And the final one was Planning and Zoning voted to recommend. Their comment was October 18th, the Planning and Zoning Board discussed the applicant's application for special permit. The board voted unanimously to recommend the special permit. That's it.
Okay. Before we start, applicant has agreed to go forward with the 4 sitting members who are Stephen Merlin, Tim McCall, Jeremy Kay, and myself, Michael Spillane. Attorney Burke,
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Jim Burke. I'm an attorney at law with offices at 48 North Pearl Street in Brockton, Massachusetts. I have the pleasure to represent Bill Lucchini and Lucchini Bus Lines and have for a number of years. Lucchini Bus Lines currently holds the contract to transport school-aged children by bus in the town of Easton and has for the last decade. When Lucchini Bus first came into operation to operate under the contract, it did so with a trailer sitting on the Columbus Avenue site that was placed there by the town of Easton. That is used for scheduling, dispatching, and communications. And it's an essential part of the operations of the school bus contract and the communication with the school department of the town of Easton. About a year ago, Mr. Lucchini became aware that due to the conditions of the trailer, it required it be replaced. He offered to do it at his own expense. We placed the trailer on site and were informed by the building department that because it was a new trailer and an accessory use, it required a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The actual application was filed on behalf of Mr. Lucchini by town representatives or school department representatives. I submitted a brief, I think, that provides an overview of the essential criteria for a special permit in the town of Easton. I'm happy to go over that with you, or if you can rely on the brief or answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I do not have any questions myself, but I'll open it up to the members of the board. Before we do that, though, if there are any members of the public that would like to speak on this matter, if you can use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen, I will call on you once we open up this matter to comments from the public. If you are calling in on a telephone, do not have access to Zoom, you can hit *9 on your phone, and that will also raise your hand. Tim, any questions?
I don't have any, no.
Okay. Steve?
None.
Jeremy?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Are there any members of the public for this hearing that would like to speak? Give that a minute. Not seeing any.
Move, we close the hearing then.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Merlin to close the hearing. Anybody want to second?
Seconded,
Seconded by Mr. McCall. All those in favor, Tim,
yes.
Steve,
Yes,
Jeremy,
Yes,
and I'll vote to close as well. While we're at it, somebody want to make a motion on the application?
motion to approve.
Motion made to approve by Mr. Merlin, seconded by
Seconded,
Mr. McCall. All those in favor, Tim,
yes.
Stephen,
Yes,
Jeremy,
yes.
and I vote to approve as well. Thank you very much, Attorney Burke.
I thank the board for its time. Good evening.
Evening.
take care, Jim.
All right. Suzanne, are you able to get in touch with either John or Ed to find out if
I can try.
they're joining us? We can move forward without them. Neither one of them has filed a Mullen affidavit as yet, so they would be entitled to do that as long as the applicant would like to move forward. Let me bring,
Right, correct.
I'll keep an eye on it. Good evening, Attorney Marioni. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm well. How are you?
Good. Do you want us to proceed with the 3 members we have, with the understanding that the 2 missing members would have to?
Actually, I'm seeing now that I'm getting a text from John Kern saying he's having trouble getting in.
Okay,
I was going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, I think we have another short matter to take care of. Maybe we could go out of order and until Mr. Curran gets in and come back to this one if Mr. Marioni doesn't mind, because he's going to be a lot longer.
Well,
I
he's
don't
got the
mind at
next
all.
one,
I'm
too.
also here for the 842 Washington Street. If that's,
Oh.
time permitting, I'd be happy to do that one first.
It's 6:40, so we're fine with opening that hearing as well. And then we can come back to
Happy
you.
to do it.
Okay, do you want to bring your client in on this one?
Michael Heichel, if you see him.
I'm just going to take you out, Rick, for a second. All right. We are opening the 6:40 public hearing, variance number 21-17. Applicant is seeking zoning relief to construct a single-family home for property located at 842 Washington Street. Mr. Secretary, if you want to read any comments that are in the file relative to this matter.
Sure. Easton Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, October 26th at 6:40 PM to be held remotely on the petition variance, Michael Heichel, for property located at 842 Washington Street, Easton, Mass. Assessors map 43U, Lot 88, for a variance pursuant to Easton Code Book, Chapter 235 zoning, 235-16, Appendix B, subsection 12, to allow a zoning relief to construct a new home. The virtual meeting link will be contained with the posted agenda at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting. This notice is available at masspublicnotices.org. We'll go through. Environmental Planner, Historical Commission, and Affordable Housing Trust, all not applicable. The Fire Department gave it a status of complete with no comments or concerns by the Captain Zalio. I'm gonna get that right one of these days. Planning and Zoning Board voted to recommend on October 18th. The board discussed the applicant's application for a variance. The board voted unanimously for recommending the application. That's it.
Sounds good. Mr. Marioni, would you like to move forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, is there a Scott Farrier?
There
in
is.
the- So Scott is the engineer. I don't know that we'll need Scott, but maybe,
It's okay, his
Yeah,
hand's
but-
raised, so I'll bring him in.
yeah, why not? We can have another face to look at.
Just to confirm, Walter, you're okay with 4 of us
Yes.
going forward on this?
Yes.
All right,
There he is. Thank you. Board members, Mr. Chairman, this property is located at 842 Washington Street. Mr. Heichel is our client. Mr. Heichel has the property under agreement. I think it's a fairly straightforward application in terms of understanding it. The lot contains 11,250 square feet. It has 95 feet of frontage by 125 feet on each side. It is a vacant lot and therefore can't be built on without relief from this board. Back in 2009 or up through 2009, the property contained a structure, a home like many of the homes surrounding it. At the time, the owner tore down the structure. It was in a bit of disrepair. His intention was to rebuild it. Unfortunately, he didn't understand that the zoning bylaw, that under the zoning bylaw, he would lose his grandfathering status if he tore the structure down. That's something that we've encountered over the years in Easton on this board. Had a couple people make similar mistakes, and it took the form of relief from what would have been a special permit to now a variance. So the lot is undersized. It is a little bit bigger than the lots on each side of it and across the street. Mr. Heichel is proposing to build a 2-story, 3-bedroom New England style home. When we last chatted, we describe it as a New England style home because he hadn't decided yet on exactly what the architecture was going to be. In order to build the home, we encouraged our client, Mr. Heichel, to keep the structure as narrow as possible, not in terms of depth, but in terms of width. And in laying out the house, his designer narrowed it to the greatest extent that he could. In doing that, the setbacks still require relief on each side to 2 feet. Interestingly, the side yard setback in a business zone is not the same 15 feet that we have in a residential zone, even though the use is residential, but is 25 feet. The structures on each side and the 3 lots directly across the street all have homes that are located closer to the property line, quite a bit closer than this property is proposing. All 5 of those lots are smaller than this, not significantly smaller, but certainly smaller. They range from 8,400 square feet. The 3 across the street on each side of this, the lots are 9,900 square feet and 9,335 square feet. And this lot is, again, 11,250 square feet. Again, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-story house, 3 bedrooms. It's the size of the lot, the size of the structure that fits is what's driving that. Also, there is a 3-bedroom septic system that will be under Title V repair. It's not a new septic system, if the board grants the relief. Because of the size of the lot and the insufficient frontage and the fact that the current owner raised the structure without coming to this board first, any construction requires relief from the board, requires a variance. So to not grant the variance would render the lot non-buildable. I think that's the background to the property. We did submit a brief dated September 27th addressing all the criteria. Certainly, that's on the record. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them as need be.
Great, thank you. Before I take questions from any of the board members, if there are any members of the public that would like to speak on this particular matter, if you could use the raise hand function if you are on Zoom, or if you're calling in, hit *9. Thanks. Tim, any questions?
I don't have any questions, no.
Okay. Jeremy?
I have no questions right now.
Steve?
None.
Okay. I don't have any questions either. Not seeing any hands raised from members of the public.
Move we close the hearing.
Any objection, Attorney Marioni?
No, thank you. Please
Okay.
close.
All right, motion made by Mr. Merlin to close the hearing.
Seconded.
By Mr. McCall. All those in favor, Tim,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes,
and I vote to close as well. Somebody want to make a motion on the application?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Merlin, seconded by
Seconded.
Mr. McCall. All those in favor, Tim,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Jeremy,
yes.
and I vote to approve as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Good luck. Here.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm getting texts from Mr. Curran. He's still trying to get in by both phone and Zoom and having trouble.
Okay. There is somebody here on the phone. I'm not sure who that is, if it's one of the board members or not.
Oh, let's see if that's bad.
Nope, they're gone, so.
It might be weather conditions that are,
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
True. That could be it.
He's saying that that when he goes in, it says it's an invalid meeting number or something like that.
he's in.
is he clicking on the agenda?
Oh, he's here now.
Yeah.
Oh.
He just got in. Good.
Hang on just a second.
There he is.
Hang on just a second, everyone. There's a G8XTHINQ that has a hand raised. Is that for the next hearing?
That's me. Can you hear me?
It's Ed?
Correct.
Gotcha. Yes,
Is
we
the
can
video
hear.
not coming through?
I don't see you, but I can hear you.
The video should be coming through. I don't know why it's not.
Okay, well, you're on, so that's okay. All right, so I think we can proceed and open up the this is the 6:35 continued public hearing, comprehensive permit number 21-10, Black Ledge LLC for property located at 87 and 91 Union Street. Tim, I don't think there were any comments from and after the last meeting, but if there are, can you let us know?
I didn't see any on the current page in the Easton permit eyes. I mean, there's been a lot of obviously filing since then of the traffic reports back and forth, but
Correct.
I didn't see no comments.
All right. Walter, somewhere along the way, we have
still here.
Oh, I know you are.
There should be two people, Rick Lincoln,
Yeah, Rick,
obviously, and maybe Jeff Bundini, who is the traffic consultant.
yep. Hang on just a
And Rick will tell us if he brought anybody with him. Rick is telling me that he can't log in. Michael removed me from the meeting, so I can't log in at all.
I removed him.
I think he has, so has he tried to get out of Zoom and come back in?
I'm gonna tell him that.
I unfortunately have done that to people, so.
So is that how it gets fixed, Stephanie? You have to
Generally,
get out and then come back? Okay.
no, I learned that if you try to put someone as a panelist because you put them on too early or something, then they can't.
There's a little bit of feedback from people, so I'm just going to keep everybody muted until it's time for questions and only the people talking. There's too many, I think there's going to be too many people in this, so. Walter, Jeff Bandini's here and Chris Iannuzzi's here as well. Want me to bring them
Perfect.
both in?
Yes, please. We should be seeing Rick in a minute.
Okay. Sorry about this, folks.
Any luck? So you logged off, and then it's saying unable to rejoin the meeting. The host has removed you. Did you hear that, Mike?
I did. Fortunately, I don't know what to do about it.
You want, Rick, is there a phone number on the agenda? Try calling in on your phone. Yeah, hold on one second though, and I'll see if I have the phone number handy. Okay, try and call in, and yeah, we'll start with Jeff. He's here. He's here. Yep. Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks. All right, Mike, he's going to try the video one more time. If not, he's going to call in. In the meantime, he's comfortable with us starting. If you're comfortable beginning with the traffic, since we have the traffic consultant here, if that's okay with the board.
That's absolutely fine. I have no problem with that. I was just looking at how to undo whatever it is I did. Yeah, go ahead. I think we're all set to proceed. So,
Okay.
Mike, Mike, do you need to announce which board members are sitting on the hearing for the record?
I don't know that we need to, since it's continued and all board members are here, but just for clarification purposes, it's Tim McCall, Steve Merlin, Ed Watson, John Curran, and myself.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With us this evening, as you guys can see, is Mr. Jeff Bandini. Jeff works with McMahon Associates. Jeff has done the bulk of the work on the traffic. There's been some, the initial report, the review, and some back and forth with the town's peer review consultant. Jeff, if you don't mind, maybe you can sort of give an overview and summarize where we ended up.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Walter. Thank you to members of the board for having me this evening. For the record, Jeff Bandini, project manager with McMahon Associates. Our office is located at 350 Miles Standish Boulevard in Taunton, Massachusetts. So we were tasked with doing the traffic impact study for the proposed development, Blackledge Apartments at 91 Union Street. So just to give you a small overview of the project is currently proposed to construct 108 residential units with 150 parking spaces on the south side of Union Street. So tasked with that, we performed the traffic study in essentially 3 steps. We looked at the existing conditions. We looked at the conditions of the study area without the proposed project. And then we looked at what the study area would look like, including the added traffic from the proposed project and how the access to and from the site would function. So at first we looked at our study area. We developed our study area based on the intersections that we thought would be the most impactful by the project, including the site driveway, the intersection with Sumner Street, the intersection with North Pearl and Pearl in the city of Brockton, and the intersection of Washington Street, located to the west of the project within the town of Easton. So what we did was we were providing a existing conditions assessment of those intersections, including existing traffic control, crash data, and capacity analysis to kind of establish that existing condition so that we could again determine the impact that the project would have. So we collected traffic data in October 2020 at the 3 intersections I mentioned, and also took automatic traffic recorder counts along Union Street at the vicinity of the proposed site driveway to measure vehicle speeds along the roadway so that you could use that speed to determine appropriate site distance criteria for the purposes of, access to and from the site itself. So those counts were taken during October 2020. So what we did was we, obviously that was done during the pandemic. So what we did was we looked at traffic adjustment factors from this company called MS2, which looked at historic traffic counts from 2019 pre-pandemic and measured that to counts that were taken along the same day within Massachusetts in 2021. So what we found was the traffic was about, on the day that the traffic data was collected, the traffic was about 18% less during 2020 than it was in 2019. So we were able to provide that adjustment factor to bring the collected traffic counts to what was considered a more normal operating condition. So when we looked at the automatic traffic recorder counts, what this does is it looks at the speeds, which I had mentioned, and also looks at the average daily traffic along the frontage of the site, which we found to be 6,500 vehicles per day. And the site distance criteria, which is normally what we use, is what's called the 85th percentile. The speed at which 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below was 40 miles an hour. So what we did was we also assessed the crash data at the 3 existing study area locations. And the only intersection that was above the MassDOT District 5 and statewide averages was the intersection of Washington Street at Union Street, of which we looked at the last 5 years of crash data that was available. And that crash data was only available through the end of 2018, and at which time the intersection was unsignalized and under stop control for the Union Street approach. And I'll get a little bit more into that later when we talk about some of the peer review, but that was the one location that did come in above average. So as far as operating conditions go, we wanted to look at what the intersection would look like without the project. We contacted Old Colony Planning Council to look at historic traffic volume data and anticipated growth within the region, and found that they anticipated the growth would be about 1% per year over the 7-year design horizon. So we projected the existing traffic counts, again, projected from 2019 to 2020, given the pandemic conditions, and then that 1% on top of that over that 7-year design horizon. We also contacted the town of Easton and the city of Brockton to establish any proposed developments that would potentially add traffic within the study area. So we kind of included that all to kind of build our model for future conditions. So as far as impact of the proposed project, we used Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation guidelines to look at how many trips the project is anticipated to generate based on the size of the facility. Again, we used 108 units, land use code for mid-rise multifamily residential. And we projected those traffic volumes into the study area based on existing conditions, existing travel patterns, and also journey to work data and logical travel routes to and from the site. So based on that criteria, we found was the maximum amount of traffic that would be coming in or out of the site would be during the weekday PM, weekday afternoon period, which would be 48 vehicles, 29 in and 19 out. From a critical standpoint, we also wanted to measure the weekday morning traffic, even though that count in total was actually a little bit less just because of the amount of exiting vehicles, folks traveling to work and school, et cetera. And that was what 37 vehicles during the weekday morning peak and 27 of those entering. Exiting. So again, we distributed those to the adjacent roadway network to kind of build what we found to be the future model. And we looked at the average delay in queuing at the 3 intersections that we included traffic counts at, and also the proposed site driveway, which is going to be handling the bulk of the traffic coming in and out of the site. So looking at all the comprehensive data that I've discussed, we looked at again, the delay in queuing and compared that future condition without the project and then future condition with the project, and looked at the amount of delay that would be added to the study area with the proposed project in place, and found that the 2 unsignalized intersections and the 2 signalized intersections, the average delay would be about an increase of about 4 seconds during the weekday morning and weekday afternoon peak period. So as far as project access goes, we also looked at that site distance requirement that I mentioned a little bit earlier, based on the 85th percentile speed of 40 miles an hour. And we compared that 40 miles an hour to the amount of site distance that is available in front of the site, both looking left and looking right from the proposed site driveway, and then approaching from the left and from the right, and found that the stopping site distance, which is the minimum criteria that is outlined in the AASHTO, American Association of State and Highway Transportation Officials guidelines, based on the 85th percentile speed. And the site distance measured was in the field was 360 feet. And based on the 40 miles an hour that we measured, the site distance required is 305 feet. So in conclusion, the amount of delay that's being added to the adjacent roadway network is fairly minor. And we established that that AASHTO site distance minimum criteria is met based on that 85th percentile speed. So we received a peer review consultant letter from Ron Mueller, who was hired by the town of Easton to provide their independent feedback of the study. And Mr. Mueller and I coordinated on a few of the issues that were outlined. Some of them due to some of the calculation methodology. Most of them were relatively minor in nature that we were able to coordinate directly with Mr. Mueller and his team. And we provided that backup information that he requested. I did want to touch on two of the major issues that he did mention. He wanted us to follow up on the crash data at the intersection of Washington and Union by collecting the police reports from the town of Easton for that intersection, namely because that intersection had been signalized since the latest data was available through the Mass DOT website. So we were able to look at that data from the town directly. And also because that was the lone intersection that was above the MassDOT District 5 and statewide criteria. So looking at that information, what we found was that there was 5 crashes in 2019 when the intersection was under construction, no crashes in 2020, and then 1 crash in 2021. So prior to the signalization of that intersection, it had demonstrated 30 crashes in total from the years 2013 to 2017. So about 6 crashes per year. And since the signal has been installed, we're looking at 1 crash so far since the installation of the traffic signal in 2020. And I wanted to also follow up about the site distance criteria. So even though we do meet the minimum stopping site distance criteria, AASHTO does have a criteria called intersection site distance, which is a recommended value that they include in their publication. And essentially what the intersection site distance does is it measures the amount of distance available for a vehicle traveling along the adjacent roadway to not have to stop or be inconvenienced by a vehicle accessing the main road from the minor roadway. So essentially what it does is it allows the vehicles turning left or right out of the site driveway to make sure that they have sufficient distance to observe a vehicle traveling along the main roadway. So in this case, it being Union Street. So what Mr. Mueller and his team requested was a sightline plan that included a graphical representation of what that site distance criteria is, how much we would have available to us based on the existing geometry, and how much would be needed to occur on the site as far as clearing goes to ensure that those minimum stopping and intersection site distance criteria are met. So we were able to provide that sightline graphic to Mr. Mueller, and he provided a response letter back to our project team that included that material that we provided was sufficient for his response. So just wanted to mention that as far as going through the process of the traffic study on McMahon's end, and also going through the response to comments coordination with the town's peer reviewer as well. So I'd be happy to take any questions from the board or provide any sort of clarifications on our study or on the responses themselves.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anybody on the board have any questions right now? And while we're taking board questions, if there are any members of the public that would like to speak on the traffic study, please raise your hand and we'll take those questions after the board members. Stephen?
There we go. So Jeff, I have a question for you. I'm interested on whether there's a sidewalk on Union Street to the Brockton line, which has been talked about in various documents, whether the sidewalk there as part of the project would change any of the accounts, speeds with pedestrians more apt to be on the sidewalks and that type of thing.
As far as how installing a sidewalk would impact the speeds of the adjacent roadway?
Yes, well, I mean, I can't remember ever in the thousands of times that I've driven up that street, ever seen people walking from the project area towards Brockton. If there's sidewalks, presumably there's going to be people from the project going to Brockton to catch a bus or whatever the reason, are going to the local convenience store there or something like that. So if there are people walking and there is a sidewalk, does that have any effect on all the counts that you've done relative to site and so forth?
As far as relative to the speeds along the roadway, I don't think that would impact the speeds along the roadway at all. If anything, I think the speeds would actually decrease if there's significant pedestrian activity, vehicles, slowing down because there are pedestrians on the sidewalk or things of that nature. As far as the traffic counts themselves, it would certainly benefit the site if people that reside on the site or want to walk between Brockton and the site decide to walk or ride a bike as opposed to using a single occupancy vehicle. The ITE number I mentioned is based on residential counts and doesn't include any adjustments for any sort of like multimodal trips to and from the site. So we didn't include any of that as far as our calculations. And if in doing that, we would have made our numbers seem a little bit less conservative, and we wanted to demonstrate kind of the higher end of our impact on the proposed adjacent roadway network.
Would you assume that if there were a sidewalk that people from the proposed project would be more apt to use it on the way to Brockton?
Yeah, I think that's the idea behind providing it, is that it would entice some people to want to use it and maybe leave the car at home. And that's kind of part of that whole approach to the site and making this a desirable site for people to visit and live.
Okay, so are you suggesting the sidewalk be part of the project based on what you just said? I'm putting you on the spot now.
That's okay. I mean, it's certainly anybody can use the sidewalk. It doesn't necessarily have to be for the site itself. It would certainly be a benefit to the site. I don't know that it's something that needs to happen as part of the site itself. I think, anybody along Union Street would be able to use it, not just folks from the site itself.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tim, any questions?
Hi, Jeff. I just have a couple questions. I don't get to read a lot of traffic studies. So you use the Institute of Transportation Engineers publication.
Yes.
And is that a number that's just national, or do they drill down to regional?
It's from sites collected all over the country for developments of a certain size. So it could include, data from Massachusetts, but it's included from elsewhere as well.
Just the whole country, basically.
Yep.
Okay, because I was surprised that the number of vehicles in the morning would be 27 out of 108 units in an area that, we don't currently have any public transportation down there. And there's no, I mean, I've never seen really anybody walk along that road too often or ride bicycles up there. I'm sure there's some. I was just surprised by that. Let's see the other, and the proposed sidewalk that you show on the plan, that would be coming out of the applicant's property, correct? That's something that you wouldn't be looking to get into Union Street. It would be coming off the front edge as shown on the plan.
I believe so, yeah. And again, that's part of the proposed clear zone that I mentioned as part of the site distance criteria. We'd want to make sure that vehicles heading west towards the site would be able to, properly observe vehicles exiting via the site driveway. So as a result, the sidewalk kind of has to come into the property in order to build that clear zone.
And obviously the property manager would continue to keep the vegetation down going forward. That's part of the plan.
Yeah, and again, the site plan that was prepared by the project team outlines what those distances are. To meet the intersection site distance criteria, the object height for the driver is 3.5 feet. So essentially what that clear zone has to do is maintain plantings that are less than 2 feet in height.
And was there any concept of grading down? Because if you drive down there, you notice there's a bit of a hill there. I don't know if they were planning. I mean, they're talking about removing some substantial group of vegetation. That might be enough, but I just didn't know if that would have to be done too.
Yeah, the plan includes like a cross section of the existing grade and also the proposed grade as well, to make sure that 2 foot height of object is met throughout the entire clear zone.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Just a quick clarification on the trip, Jen, if I will.
Go right ahead.
So the 37 that you mentioned in the morning, so that's only the weekday morning peak hour. That's not to say that vehicles wouldn't travel outside of that peak hour on one end or the other.
Well, I would assume, I mean, I'm not in your field, but if I had 100 people living in a place, I would assume maybe 75 people would have to drive to go to work. And I thought that the number was, because it also says 10 people will be coming in. I thought, I'm surprised how low that is. So that's why I brought it up.
Okay.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
John, any questions? You're muted if you're there.
No.
Okay. Ed, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. I don't have any questions myself right now. I do not see any raised hands from members of the public. Rick, do you want to add anything to this? I know you're in on the phone. I apologize for bouncing you. Quite frankly, I'm surprised you're the first that's happened to. If you want to talk, you just have to hit *6 on your phone and that will unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Hi, board. Thanks for hearing us again. Yeah, that's never happened to me before. So not a big deal. So we have the experts here tonight, and I'll just sit and listen while I can. But no additional comments on the traffic. Although I will say when they talked about the sight lines and potential vegetation there, we've been working with the landscape architects. Their first go around was a whole line of probably really pretty trees. But we quickly educated them that, there's whatever it is, 2.5 feet or 3 feet, 3.5 feet, we've got to stay below that in that sight line area. So they're working on that right now, but it's likely to be some pretty low and slow growing bush type vegetation, and behind that in the leaching field will all be grass. So just a detail on that.
Okay. Rick, I did fix the setting on the Zoom program that would not allow you back in. I don't know if you want to try logging back in from your computer or not, but.
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Stephanie? You're muted.
Me. There we go. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, there were some recommendations made in Muller's report. kind of as a condition. One, of course, has been discussed, which is maintaining that clear zone for the line of sight. The other was that they had recommended installing a stop sign at the driveway exit, which was not added to the plan as I understand it. And then they recommended a crosswalk also be provided to connect the driveway sidewalk to the other sidewalks within the community. At the multi-use areas in building 2. And from a planning perspective, we were very happy that Mr. Lincoln was amenable to installing that sidewalk along Union Street.
Does Rick or Jeff or Walter, any of you want to address those 3 comments from Ron Mueller's report or suggestions, and whether or not those are going to be implemented into the project or not?
don't
I
believe
can,
that
Michael.
any of
This
the
is Rick
3 are a
Lincoln.
Problem, right?
I'm sorry, Walter, what?
If Rick wants to speak to it, I just commented that I don't believe that either of those 3 are an issue for us.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
No, and in fact, Michael, that there was an email this afternoon because I had talked to our engineers a couple of days ago. So they have already implemented those on a new plan, and they sent that, I think, to Suzanne, but it probably just didn't make its way to everybody. So we had no problem with any of those comments.
Okay, great. All right, I don't see anybody with the public, so unless there's anything else to add on the traffic, I think we're good with that. We can move on to other items.
No, I think that's good for the traffic, Mr. Chairman. At this point, if the board would like, the applicant's engineers, Conoco, uploaded a pretty substantial set of plans through Permitize, maybe a week ago now. So maybe we could have Mr. Lincoln speak, sort of take us from where we ended up last meeting to the evolution of the plans and what allowed those plans to be finalized, or to the extent that they are finalized, so that the peer review process could now begin. If you remember, there was some geotechnical issues going on, some studies, borings, test pits, and so forth. So maybe Rick can just give a brief overview of how we got to where we are now.
Okay.
If he's still there.
He is.
I'm
Rick,
still here.
and Rick, I've got.
I did give it an. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I've got the, I think you had asked Suzanne to have a couple of the plans available for screen share. So I've got those available and ready to pop up when you would like me to.
Yeah, I did try another shot at getting in, but it's still the same error message. So is Chris Iannuzzi
He is here.
available?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'll just start with a broad brush. It's kind of hard, without seeing the plan. So basically the last 3 or 4 weeks, we just put a lot of flesh on the bones, if you will. So the building layouts, parking layouts, nothing has changed. But what has been refined quite a bit is all of the grading. So we were able to, once we fixed the leaching field height up front with DEP and our hydro consultant out of Boston, we were able to finish off the site, and Chris's team at Conoco, the engineers, were able to run all the stormwater calcs, and so the full set of plans with details and all of the stormwater information was submitted to Woodard and Curran, but it was only submitted relatively recently, probably within the last week. Some of the refinements concerned like trash containers. We had one. We thought 2 was really needed with two long buildings. And then a lot of the other changes, honestly, to the buildings, because there's been a whole lot going on with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire sprinkler, discussions with water department in town, DPW in town on the, we've kicked off the engineering to upgrade the 6-inch water line to an 8-inch water line. And whether fire sprinkler pressures are high enough and lots of things like that, but it's all kind of behind the curtain type stuff, nothing that you'll see that's obvious on the plans there. So with that, maybe Chris can introduce himself and open it up to some questions. I will say, I'll back up a half a step and say that some of the detention pond sizes, there's one off on the Brockton side, and then there's one up the front, and then there's another one that's we were able to completely keep it subsurface, on our the west side of the site, near the abutter. Actually, it's in the rear of his site, so all that's worked out well. We're pleased with the results, and I'll open it up to Chris and maybe some questions.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having me on tonight. My name is Chris Iannuzzi. I'm the project manager on the project, Conoco. Also to the members of the board, thank you. Rick pretty much summarized what's been happening behind the scenes. I will tell you what to expect moving forward. We are going to make revisions to some of the layout aspects, particularly the parking, which encroaches beyond the property line into Brockton. That is ongoing presently, but what you see right there, it is probably what we're going to go into file with in planning board as well. We're trying to remove any kind of encumbrances on the Brockton side of the property. That's really about it. But pretty much it is what you see today. And yes, we did file the complete package last week with the stormwater report as well. So I realize it's relatively fresh on your plates, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have pertaining to the layout and anything else.
So let me just start with a real quick question. Are there any expected anticipated revisions to the plans that we're looking at tonight?
Yes, there will be. There are expected revisions. I'll point along to the eastern drive aisle, which extends along the eastern property line. That we are presently converting in order to eliminate the parking encroachment, but at the same time maintain some parking along that side. We're going to probably move to a one-way segment, preferably from the southeast corner of that building all the way around to the main drive when you come in. So that's more looking like a one-way scenario with a more narrow driveway, and preferably some angled parking just to maintain that count that we have now. The other obvious vision would be.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt
right.
you.
That's okay. That's exactly it. Yeah, that segment there from that building corner, that right there, all the way north to probably the parking up on the Union Street side, up north of the community buildings. That segment will all go to a one-way situation. And the reason for that is to eliminate any encroachment within the town, city of Brockton. Also included in that is the relocation of the dumpster pad location in that vicinity. We're probably going to locate that more central to both buildings. And the pad will probably be a little bit larger than it may. We may have to go back to a one dumpster pad location. We're still toying around with other locations, but as you can see, the site is getting rather tight. So we're going to have to work with what we have for now.
Okay. Thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add at this point as far as changes go, or should I see if the board has any
I
questions?
think the plan is with the exception of what I just mentioned, that's pretty much all the changes that are going to take place as far as I'm aware of. I do know that the wastewater system is under development presently, but we've sized it appropriately. And so what you see on the utility plan is what it's going to be. I think Rick mentioned earlier that we had some issues regarding sight line there relative to any proposed landscaping that we planned, but we intend on maintaining those sight lines, as Jeff pointed out. So to me, it's the plan is at a 95% level at this point.
Okay, great. I'm gonna stop sharing this for now because I can't see everybody at once. Steve, do you have any questions?
Just a couple of thoughts, questions. I don't know. So space is obviously tight. So I guess I'd ask this way. What happens if there's a major snowstorm, a foot or more? Where does the snow go? And because the space is so tight, is the project too dense or too ambitious at 108 units? So I don't know if Rick wants to answer it, Walt, or somebody. Give me some feedback on that for discussion purposes.
This is
Well,
Rick.
I would comment. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the snow issue, the snow storage. We would take advantage of open landscaped areas up to and including the leaching area up front. In a worst case scenario, I think snow would have to be hauled off site. But we will take advantage of any kind of, open green areas that we have for storage. And I'll further identify those on the layout plan as we move forward.
Okay, and then the other comment or observation or thought, is the project too dense at 108 units or too ambitious maybe? Maybe it should be a little bit narrowed down in scope or something. I'm just throwing out a thought more than anything else, as long as the plans are not finalized yet.
I'll
Well, I
answer
will
that.
just make,
I'll let Rick go. Go ahead, Rick.
I'm sorry. Yeah, just a couple of quick comments on that. The parking ratio is fairly healthy there, meaning I think we've got plenty of parking. I've done far less with parking ratios. This isn't Boston, but I've got one up in Mattapan where the city is looking for a parking ratio of 1, which is, I'd say, a little bit low. I did do a project in Hanover. It's probably been about 9 or 10 years now, and we had 74 units on like 3.7 acres, and it was like a 1.3 parking ratio, and we've had no problems there. And there wasn't a ton of green area on that first one, but we had no issues with parking, which is seems to be the key statistic, for residents and for the town, just to make a safe project. So I'm not sure what we're at. I don't have those plans in front of me, but I know we've got a fatter parking ratio than 1.3.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of parking necessarily as much as in earlier versions of everything, there was questions about the amount of recreation space or open space. You're limited to what you can do there. So, we have to look at everything, the amount of parking. And there was something in the paper today that Boston has cut its limits in order to encourage affordable housing. They've cut parking way down, as you just mentioned, but there's going to be, so the snow removal could or could not be an issue depending on the size of storm, hauling it out, which is okay, I guess. The plans are still in flux a little bit, but I'm not seeing necessarily, enough green space or recreation space in this project that I'm reading anyway. So that's just observations for discussion purposes at this time. All right, Mike, I'm all set for now.
Thanks, Steve. Tim?
On the sheet 6, I noticed the infiltration basin is going to be completely located in Brockton. Do you anticipate having to go in front of any of their boards to get that approved, or how would that work?
We anticipate that we will have to go before the Brockton Conservation Commission due to the proximity of that work to a resource area. At this point in time, we're not aware of any other permits that would be required from the city of Brockton. And that's why those parking spaces are being removed. Parking is, in my opinion, considered a use. And the use of that property for parking, I believe would require approvals from the city of Brockton. So that's why their parking is being pulled closer to the building and taken out of the city of Brockton. So no, we don't believe that any approvals beyond Conservation Commission are necessary. And we have communicated with the city.
Walter, I might add that late this afternoon, I did review a new concept plan, which in fact drags those spaces back into the eastern side of the site, exactly with the same number we have presently shown on the plan before you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Ed, any questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. John?
No questions right now. I'm all set.
Okay. I don't have any questions myself at the moment, so we do have a hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mr. Horsley. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very well. Thank you. Yourself. My name is Scott Horsley. I am a hydrologist working and have been retained by Hill Law, who is representing J. D. Lorenzo Company, as well as David Howe and possibly others. I would like to, with your permission, I'd like to just briefly introduce myself, and I have 3 or 4 comments. And I have prepared 3 or 4 images that might explain those better if you're able to allow me to show them. If you're not, I can walk through my comments without the graphics. I leave it up to you, Mr. Chairman.
No, you should be able to screen share. I believe we are set to allow anybody to do that. So.
Okay, I am not seeing that option on my screen yet, but I'll watch for it if somebody can enable me.
Either at the bottom or the top of the screen?
Yeah, I'm generally familiar with how to do that, but I'm not seeing.
I may need to add you as a panelist. Hang on just a second.
Thank you. That looks like it worked.
Okay,
So
great.
thank you. Let me see if I can just quickly share my screen. And can you see that image there, the map?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let me just briefly introduce myself. I do have over 30 years experience as a hydrologist. I've worked nationally for the Environmental Protection Agency for 20 of those years. I serve on a number of Mass DEP advisory committees. I've served as a consultant to Mass DEP on both wastewater and stormwater issues. I also teach as an adjunct faculty member at both Tufts University as well as Harvard in their graduate curriculum. And I'll leave the introduction at that. As I said, I just have a few comments. And this first one, I just want to indicate here where the subject site is, which is shown by this indicator here. And one of our concerns is water quality impacts. I think you're aware there are wetlands to the east of the property as well as the south. Those wetlands discharge to Dorchester Brook, which then flows further downstream to a number of other water resources, which are classified by the state and protected under the surface water quality regulations. And then, as you can see, French Pond is just off to the west here. So the setting is important. And the first note that I noticed is a question on the water levels. I'm aware that the applicant has had a couple rounds of test pits done. I think the first ones were somewhat problematic in terms of finding adequate sites. So they went back, and I have reviewed those test pits. I'm just going to scroll down to this image. One of the things that I find curious, and it's really a question that certainly we don't need to answer today, but this is a close-up of part of the site plan that shows the wetland on the east side of the property. I believe this is the part that's in Brockton you were just referring to. And that wetland is, parts of it are at elevation 171, 170. Now, when I review the test pits on the property, one of the things that they need to determine is the so-called seasonal high groundwater level. In some cases, they found so-called mottling in the test pits to determine that. In other cases, I don't think they did find mottling. But the elevations in the test pits for the water levels are between 166 and about 170, lower than the wetland, which I find curious. Normally, and I do have a picture here to show you conceptually, and I'm sorry for scrolling around here. In my experience, if I can just get to this, let me just make this a little bit wider. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
No problem.
I have a lot open on my desktop here. Okay, here we go. Okay, I think that'll help. So normally what I've done is taken a cross section here from the US Geological Survey. Here's the stream. This is groundwater flowing to the stream, and this would represent the water table. So what we typically see is water tables going up when we get away from streams and wetlands. I've sketched in the wetland here right along the adjacent to the stream. Normally, water tables and wetlands are within 1 foot, which is why I would expect the groundwater levels to be in the 170 range. So just a question there. Again, we don't need to answer it tonight, but as I'll get to later, I am aware that a hydrogeologic report has been filed with Mass DEP. That would be really helpful to understand this hydrology, which I think is critically important. So one question that I'll have through you, Mr. Chair, is if we can get a copy of that report. And I would, if the town doesn't already have it, I would think that they'd want to get that in their hands, because I'm guessing there's a lot of good information on water table, groundwater flow, which would be relevant to our discussion. So that's my first point or question. My second comment or question is, if I can just scroll down here, is to talk about something called groundwater mounding. And I'm not sure whether you've dealt with this on other sites before, but what happens is when you infiltrate both stormwater and wastewater into the subsurface, the water table rises. Now, I was one of the people on the original Stormwater Advisory Committee for Mass DEP, and Stormwater Standard number 3 was intended to keep the hydrology on the site the same, pre-development, post-development. I mean, don't increase it, don't decrease it. In this case, the applicant's stormwater drainage report suggests that they're going to be infiltrating about 2 times as much stormwater as in the existing condition. And I can show you, I also have a copy of that table, which is right here. Sorry, it's a little large, but you can see, and this is the text from the stormwater report. The existing level of recharge is the 4835 cubic feet, and what is proposed is 10,412. And you can see they even say substantially more than the required. Now, some people think more is better, but wetlands may not think so. And like I said, when you put more water in the ground, the water table is going to come up. And if it's double, that could be pretty significant. So I'm going to suggest that a groundwater mounding analysis be done. And this may be part of the hydrogeologic report that has been sent to DP. And I hope that we can, the town, as well as the abutters, can get a look at that as we're discussing the project. I think that might clarify some of these questions. And then my third comment is back to the stream. Actually, let me hold for 1 second here. If I could just switch to the site plan, which I think I have here. I want to draw your attention to the fact that this sheet 6 shows the stormwater facilities, and you can see there are 3, and I'll point to them. Subsurface infiltration systems. There are also 2 surface detention / infiltration systems, one over here in the east, one on the north. So these will cause the groundwater rises that I'm referring to, but they will do that in conjunction with, and I believe it's the next sheet, this shows the proposed wastewater facility. So these will work in conjunction. They will both load water to the groundwater, and I'm hoping one of the questions I have on the groundwater work that's been done is if they've modeled all of those together, which would be important to do because I believe they're going to be operating simultaneously, meaning stormwater is going to be going in the ground while wastewater is being discharged. So the analysis really should include both. And I'll just note on this plan, for some reason, it does show these 3 subsurface infiltration systems, but the other 2 surface infiltration systems are not on this plan. I'm not sure why, but this one is quite close. The northern infiltration, very close to this, to the wastewater infiltration system. And I would expect that you would get something called interference, meaning the effects of the groundwater mounding at these facilities would overlap. And I'm hoping that those would be analyzed together. So that would be that comment. And then I guess my last comment is going back to Dorchester Brook that I already showed you the image of. I think it's worth noting, we're concerned about the water quality impacts there. As I said, there are state standards. It's a Class B river. There are standards in that river, and the surface water quality regulations basically prohibit any pollutants getting into the river that would cause any exceedances on the water quality criteria. The one that I think is of most interest here is phosphorus, which drives algae blooms, including harmful algal blooms such as cyanobacteria in surface waters if phosphorus levels are not maintained. And I would just point out that the proposed wastewater flow here is, I think it's 16,500 gallons per day, roughly. The flow in the stream during summer base flow is 19,000 gallons per day. So we're going to be adding 16,000 gallons and change of wastewater to a fairly low flow stream at 19,000. When that wastewater discharges into the stream, it's going to comprise nearly half of the flow in the stream. So I would suggest that that alone would warrant a water quality impact analysis of the stream. And then I guess those are all my comments. And Mr. Chairman, I would be happy if you'd like to submit a letter. You can see I started drafting one here. I'll stop sharing. That will go through these comments in detail and provide all the references that I've mentioned. And I can probably get that to you this week if you'd like to see that. And be happy to make that part of the file. And again, I would just close by, first of all, thanking you for the time, but ask again through you, Mr. Chairman, if we could perhaps ask the applicant if they would be willing to provide the town a copy of the hydrogeologic report, which I know has been filed with Mass DEP because I spoke to them today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Horsley. Yes, if you don't mind sending in a letter summarizing, that would be, I think, helpful.
Certainly do that. I'd be happy to answer any questions too.
Sure. Rick, would you or Walter or anybody on your side like to respond to any of the questions or discuss?
I would say, Mr. Chairman, that I think it's premature.
Okay.
The project, the plans were submitted, as we mentioned earlier, uploaded last week. Town's peer review consultant has not completed their initial review yet. I would think that, Mr. Horsley submitting his letter, that letter, I would think Mr. Horsley, as well as the applicant, would like to go to the peer review consultant. As he would like our information, we would like his information. I think that's how this process works smoothly. We can consider it, and maybe by the time we come back to the next hearing, we can address the issues in his letter. Certainly anything that is uploaded to the town, submitted to the peer review consultant, we have no problem sharing with Mr. Horsley. I don't know. I would have to ask Chris whether or not the report, and maybe Chris doesn't know because he didn't submitted to DEP, but it maybe, Chris, do you know if that report that was filed with DEP, whether that was also uploaded to the town or provided to the town's peer review consultant?
Fortunately, Walter, I'm not privy to that. I don't recall if it was. I have not seen it.
Well, I would think, and Rick, hopefully you're still there. I would think that now that Mr. Horsley has requested the information, now he's going to submit his letter. That's going to go to the peer review consultant. The peer review consultant, I would think, is going to say, can I have a copy? So if we're going to give a copy to the peer review consultant, maybe we can arrange to have one electronically presented to Mr. Horsley as well. So unless Rick
Yeah,
objects,
I don't have a
think
problem
that's
with
the
that.
right thing to do. That'll help us,
Yeah.
maybe when we come back to the next meeting, drill down and narrow down on a lot of these issues.
Absolutely.
Chairman, may I just ask one other question?
Certainly.
Well, first of all, thank you for the response. And I just for clarification, I agree with you. Let's provide each other the information as soon as possible. And I can certainly get you my letter, if not tomorrow, on Thursday. But just a clarification, are you suggesting that the hydrogeologic report that's been filed with DEP would be provided sort of in the same time frame?
I don't know, because the person that provided that to DEP is not here this evening. That's
Okay.
why I asked Chris Iannuzzi if he had access to the information today and was aware of where it was and who it went to, and he answered that he didn't. So we'll have to look into it tomorrow. We're not going to slow play it. We're gonna move it along as soon as we
Thank
can.
Thank you.
Again, our goal is to move this process along, not to delay it.
Thank you very
So
much.
I think we'll get it to you as soon as we can. I assume that the chair wants us to submit this information through the town, through the board.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate, yes.
Okay. I just made a note.
Horsley, we can send it to you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, generally, we would have it uploaded to Permitize and we would let everyone know that it's available on Permitize.
That's fine as well.
Great.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have any other questions on what's been presented, discussed tonight, or have anything that they would like to add to this? I do not see any hands raised with any of the attendees that are remaining.
Michael, I just have a couple of comments. I did get a chance to go through the revised waiver request.
Mhm.
And several of the comments I think were addressed. I had no further comments on those. I do feel that they should talk about the wetland resources that are jurisdictional under the bylaw. I understand they're seeking a waiver of those, but I feel like they should be identified and addressed, and reasons why they should not be considered as part of the project. And I understand that a comprehensive permit does not have to follow the wetlands protection bylaw, but they have to seek a waiver. And again, when you're seeking a waiver, you generally provide a reason for why you're requesting that waiver.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we've committed through a conversation with town council that we would provide a narrative, and to the extent that plan support is necessary, as Stephanie just requested.
Okay, great, thank you.
And then just that was the primary on the waivers. And then on my report from August, I also mentioned that the Affordable Housing Trust would like to see more 3-bedroom units. And also that the Historical Commission, Mr. Lincoln, did present concepts for the restoration and reuse of the historical structure on the property. And they were very supportive of the idea. I think the plan is that he's going to combine it with the community center. The suggestion was that the commission would hope that when there were more detailed plans, elevations, and material specifications, that they are consulted on those. And also that staff had advised the applicant not to demolish the addition to the Monk House until the overall project plan is finalized. So rather than move it and then have to move it again, it seems to make sense to mothball it until the time when the move is really imminent.
Agreed. Michael Kennefick, Town Council, you have a hand raised. How are you?
How's everybody?
Good, thanks.
Just a small point, and it doesn't really go to any of the peer review. Just I looked at the electronic file. It looked like this was filed on May 20th. So you're running close to your 180 days. We had a conversation with council today, and he said he'd get us a letter tomorrow. I just wanted to kind of remind the board that you have to act within the 180 days. But I think we're going to get an extension tomorrow in writing. But I just wanted to put that on the record before we close tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And I was going to mention that before we close the hearing as well, because we don't have a decision. The 180th day is Christmas morning, so I don't think everybody wants to be back doing this that morning to finalize everything and get it in under the 180 days. So, Stephen.
I just want to pick up on what Stephanie said about the 3-bedroom units, which I mentioned the first night we were here. I think Walter knows, if he remembers, I had 8 years on the Affordable Housing Trust, and I mentioned it before. I'm very interested on fitting in more 3-bedroom units. You have the bare minimum now, and that's part of the housing production plan and everything else that goes along with it. So I don't know if the plans aren't final, whether that can be done in some fashion. I know space is tight already. So I'm just throwing that out there once again. Thanks.
Just in response to that, we committed to Mr. Merlin that we would look at the issue. That commitment remains. As you guys know, this is always a tough issue. It's need, it's space, it's dollars and cents. It's all of those things. And without making a commitment as to increasing the number, Rick Lincoln and I talked about it the next day, and he agreed that he would take a hard look at it, and that commitment remains.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just have one other comment. We don't have to go back to the plan at the moment, but we really like to make sure that there is adequate open space for people who are residents within the building, so that they have a place to go for recreation and respite.
Yeah, Steve, you had mentioned that as well earlier, I believe. And I think, I don't know if Rick had addressed the comment at that time, but I think that's also, in addition to the additional 3-bedroom units, that's also been brought up a couple of times, not just tonight either. So I guess given that there's going to be a few minor edits to the plans, we can wait and see what happens with the plans and go from there. Anybody have any other questions, comments, anything they want to add? Not seeing any additional comments or hands raised. I think at this point we can agree that we will continue to the next hearing, which is November 16th. Does that work for you, Walter and Rick?
I guess I would ask two people here if they feel that's enough time to be productive. One, Stephanie on the peer review side, and two, Chris on his working to do the things he needs to do with the peer review consultant. is between now and the 16th. Is that enough time to be productive? For me, it's
Yeah.
fine.
I was gonna ask you that because we did push the October hearing date back a bit. You know, we've got Thanksgiving thrown in there a week, so I don't know what everybody's availability would be if we went out past the 16th, but certainly a valid question, so.
I think it's going to be tight. I mean, I heard this evening that there are still revisions to the plan that we haven't seen. I don't know how that's going to impact the stormwater review. And they are just getting started on that. I just authorized them. They got us the quote just before the meeting tonight. So they will be moving forward on it. But I'm sure they're going to have comments. And Chris,
Yeah, I would agree with that, Stephanie, as well. I mean, we're pushing for a December agenda for planning board. I would, based on what I've heard tonight, I would think it would be tight as well. And not to mention the issues that I mentioned, but some of the other issues that are now in front of us.
So I guess my next question would be, do we think that there's a date between our November and December hearings, which is the November 16th and December 14th, I believe, Suzanne?
Correct.
That would be appropriate, or do we want to continue to the December 14th hearing? And again, you're looking at the 23rd, which is the week of Thanksgiving, the 30th, which would be the following week, or 7th of December. Assuming any of those, you know, we have availability those nights. And we have board member availability.
I'd like to go to the 30th if it's possible, given that's 35 days between now and then. That's a pretty good chunk of time to get some work done.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that would be enough time, and I think, you know, going out to December 14th kind of drags this out longer than it needs to.
Yeah, we tend to lose a lot of days when we do that, right?
Yep.
So if we could do the 30th, that would be great. Obviously, board member schedule is important.
Yes, any members of the board have any conflicts, any sitting members on especially, and Jeremy, you too, because you did sign a Mullen form, so you are eligible to continue to sit on this if need be.
I would be available, assuming that I can figure out why I couldn't log in on Zoom right away tonight.
Just start at 4:30 that night.
November 30th works for me, technologically.
Okay, Ed, thank you.
I agree with that also.
We somehow lost Steve. Oh, now he's back. Steve, does November 30th work for you? You're muted.
My power blinked and then I was gone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, November 30th should be fine.
Okay, and Tim, that works for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, that's fine for me. Anything previously scheduled that night, Stephanie, that would interfere with our using the?
not that I know of. Tuesday nights are usually pretty open.
Yeah, that's what I find as well. All right, Suzanne, are you available?
Correct. Yes.
All right, then why don't we continue this hearing until November 30th at 6:30 p.m.
So, Michael, before we do that, I just read an email from Mike Kennefic, and I just want clarification. He was asking if the board knew that you need to appoint Beta tonight. We don't usually do that on the planning board side. The planning board doesn't have to appoint the peer review consultant, but Mike, is it different for a comprehensive permit with the zoning board of appeals?
Yeah, typically the zoning board will appoint the peer review consultant. And then there's also, actually, the owner can object. I just wasn't sure. I wasn't at the prior hearings. So I spoke to Suzanne today and I asked her what the status was with peer review, and she mentioned that Beta had submitted a quote. So I assume at this point you should just make a motion to appoint Beta.
Okay, and that's fine. That had not been on my radar. So any objection, Walter or Rick?
No, we have no objection.
Okay, so move then to appoint Beta peer review.
Motion made by Mr. Merlin to appoint Beta, seconded by
Seconded,
Mr. McCall. All in favor, Tim,
yes.
Steve,
Yes,
Ed,
Yes,
John,
Yes,
and I'll vote to approve their appointment as well. Rick, did you want to say something?
No, I'm just walking around. So sorry about that.
No. It's my fault, so don't worry about it. But your phone, lit up on the screen, so I thought you were trying to.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Then if we're good, why don't we, somebody want to make a motion to continue the hearing until 6:30 on November 30th? Via Zoom.
I'll move to continue the hearing to November 3rd, November 30 at 6:30.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Curran, seconded by
second,
Mr. Merlin. All in favor, Tim,
Yes,
Stephen,
yes,
Ed,
yes,
John,
Yes,
and I'll vote to continue as well. Thank you, everyone that was here and participated and provided information. And we will see you all on the 30th.
Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated.
All right.
okay, thank you.
Thanks for your
Good
time.
night as well.
Good night.
Stephanie, what about Meadowview?
Oh,
You want to stay on for that, Stephanie, or you're more than welcome to, so.
sure.
Okay.
I mean,
Just to refresh, I know it went out via email, but just to refresh members of the board's memories, Meadowview submitted their cash surety agreement in the amount of $218,652. My understanding is that check has already been delivered to the town. Is that correct, Stephanie?
yes.
Okay. In fact, I have a copy of it right here. So we just need to approve this, correct? And then we need to.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Am I permitted to sign this as I've been doing with our decisions on behalf of the board, given our vote that's on record, or do we need to have everybody sign it?
I believe you can sign it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on the
No, well, so I move we approve it, and in case there's an issue about it, have the chair authorized to sign this particular document.
Very well said.
seconded,
Second, Steve's motion,
seconded,
seconded by Mr. McCall. All in favor, Tim,
yes.
John,
yes.
Stephen,
Yes,
Ed?
yes.
I will vote to approve it as well and undertake the responsibility of getting it signed.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, I will bid you all good night.
What's that?
Good night.
I will bid you all good night.
Good night, Stephanie.
Good night.
Yes, Stephanie.
This has to be notarized as well. Do I need to sign? I don't need
Correct.
to sign the original, Suzanne, correct?
You'll need to come in person, yes.
What's that?
Yes, if you come to the town hall, we could do it there.
Well, I mean, I can do it at my office.
We'll discuss, yeah.
Okay, we'll figure it out. That's fine. Not a problem. So the last two items. So we had even we talked about this on last night previously, as far as timelines for documents. And I know it's an issue. We've had issues where people submit things on the afternoon of the hearing, and then we have a hearing and nobody knows what we're talking about because we all have jobs and other responsibilities that prevent us from being up to speed on things that are filed late. I do know, and I don't know, Suzanne, if you have any information as to why. I don't recall us as the board taking that provision out, but the board voted to remove the notice requirement a few years ago.
Did that have something to do with the planning board taking over some of our duties back then?
It may have.
Walter probably would have known
I
why
know,
we did it.
I meant to ask him, I meant to reach out to him before tonight, and then I forgot this was on and forgot to call him, but, I mean, we can discuss it at the next hearing, and I can try and touch base with him to find out. I don't have a problem with it per se, but I don't know that there's necessarily if somebody files something late, there's no reason why we can't sit at the hearing and say, none of us have an opportunity to review it, so you're gonna have to continue or something. I don't know. But I don't have a problem either way. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be like, put on there as a guide, but everything's different. I mean, when somebody comes in with a 55-page traffic report, the same day, there's no way I'm gonna be able to, but if somebody's does a small sketch of their backyard, that's totally different. So, I mean, I think we should definitely consider putting that in there. And then, if somebody at the last minute, I forgot to bring you this letter from an abutter, I don't think we would, kick them out of the meeting for that. So.
Yeah, and actually, I was at a hearing last week when the same issue arose. There was a letter of support from an abutter that just came in that day, and I don't necessarily want to have a hard and fast rule that we're not going to take anything under consideration, but I don't have a problem putting in some sort of proviso that says, listen, if there's anything of substance and you don't get it to us 7 days or 5 days before the hearing, we can't guarantee that we're going to take it under consideration at the hearing. It
Seems
is
fair.
a volunteer board. It's like I said, everybody's got other responsibilities and jobs, and
Well, wasn't part of the issue last time that we met and, on the day of that meeting, we were getting late filed documents and there was no other business on the agenda? I mean, we all got together for a meeting, and it just, we reserved the time, and it was all for naught. I think that was, to the extent that I had comments last time, I think it was born out of that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that was the case. I think we got sort of stuck, so to speak, with, the only new substantive documents from the prior hearing were submitted that day, and it was the only matter on, or maybe, I think it may have been, you're right, there may have been the only matter on. Maybe that's, we don't have a lot of busy nights like we've had tonight, but, to sort of set a rule, I think out of courtesy, it would be nice if people, especially if it's the only hearing on, submitted stuff timely to us, that we had an opportunity to review it before the hearing. I don't know if we can, tell people we're going to unilaterally cancel the hearing if they don't get us anything new.
Yeah, well, you can put a proviso in it. The board, has discretion to accept documents afterwards or something, but this was my idea, so. Or I raised it first at the time because, what Tim just said, we're getting 50, 70, 80 pages worth of documents 2 hours, 3 hours before the meeting, and that can't be.
Right.
It may be just comprehensive permits that we have to look at. It may be just a general rule. But it would be interesting to find out why we repealed all those rules.
Yeah.
I think it had something to do with the planning board taking a lot of our functions in the revisions then, but I don't know.
Yeah, why don't we do this? Why don't between now and our next hearing, which is actually the 16th of November, and there is
Yeah.
a matter on for that
One
night.
hearing, yeah.
Why don't I see if I can figure out why it was repealed in the first instance and take a shot at trying to come up with some language that we can review and consider at the next hearing and add it at that point. I think at least for our purposes with Union Street, we're getting, more and more information in a timely manner now. And I think everybody's kind of motivated to get to the finish line one way or the other here. So I don't foresee this being an issue moving forward with this particular hearing, but it would be nice to have something there for purposes of moving forward with newer hearings.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can put something, or we could agree that any document in excess of a certain number of pages has to be submitted in advance.
Yep.
10, 15, whatever.
Yep. I agree.
Okay.
I'll work on some proposed language, and we can put this on the agenda for the hearing on the 16th and see if we can finalize something.
Good.
I just wanted to add that applicants like guidance when they're submitting their applications, and they've asked me when is the deadline for submitting
Yep.
documents. So it comes up, during the application process.
That's fine. And I have no problem if somebody's asking. What I don't necessarily want to exclude exclusively is an opportunity for, like Tim said, in a butter, either objection or support letter or something like that comes in at the last minute. Obviously, if it's something short, we can all kind of read during the hearing. It's even, less of an issue. So, yeah, we can definitely come up with something on that. So, let me, so if we're okay on that for the time being, why don't we, I've got to go back. We've got to open and dismiss the 6:45 public hearing. Special permit number 21, applicant was seeking permission to operate an indoor recreation center and event hall for property located at 15 Plymouth Drive. The applicant is not sure this property is going to be sufficient for their needs and has asked us to withdraw the application. I would propose that we withdraw it without prejudice in the event that the applicant has a way to figure out how to configure what it is that they would like to do at this particular property. They're not obstructed from refiling. That's my suggestion. If anybody has any objection.
Move they be allowed to withdraw without prejudice.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Merlin, seconded by Mr. Watson, I believe. All in favor, Tim?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Steve?
Yep.
John?
Yes.
And I'll vote to allow them to withdraw without prejudice. Last thing on the agenda for tonight is the approval of the minutes from the September 21st hearing. Somebody want to make a motion on that?
So moved.
I'll move to approve the minutes from September 21.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Curran to approve, seconded by Mr. Merlin. All in favor, Tim?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I vote to approve as well. Suzanne, am I forgetting anything?
No, very good.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by everyone.
Seconded.
Mr. Merlin, seconded by Mr. McCall. All in favor, Tim?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I will vote to adjourn as well. We will see you guys on November 16th.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Have a nice night.
You know.
Nice night.
Thank you.
Gentlemen. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Thank you, Susan.
No worries.